Today we're gonna show you how to make the best smoked Texan brisket you've ever tasted. Let's get started. That's right, we are doing beef brisket, baby, because if there's one thing we love on this channel, it's beef, banter, and bloody good times. So the first thing we need to do before we can actually turn this into a beautiful piece of Texas brisket is to open it up and trim it. So let's go ahead and do that. And today, to keep things like small for us, we're doing a 2.5 kilo brisket, but the same rules apply to everything. In fact, it's actually easier when you use a larger brisket than a smaller brisket because it's a little more forgiving in the cook. You can make a few more mistakes without being punished quite so severely. So this right here is just a cut off piece of a whole brisket. You can see where the cut was made here. So this is the end cap. So I wanted this piece because two reasons. One, it's the fattest part of the cow, which means we've got the most room for error. But two, because it's the fattest part of the cow, it means we can cook it a lot longer than if we were cooking the tail or the end of the brisket, so that this way we can really make it fall apart, super juicy, super tender style brisket. So honestly, this part here is kind of okay because it's like fairly light layer, and what you do want is still a layer of fat covering this because you want that fat to protect the meat, to add flavor, and to melt into the meat. So all of this area is kind of fine. This area over here is what we need to trim off because this is where we've got quite a thick layer of really hard fat that you can feel right here. So we can just kind of take off a chunk of this. Make sure you've got a really sharp knife for this job. It will just make your life a whole lot easier. Let's take that off. So look how thick that's just pure fat. There's honestly not a lot of value to that, so we can go ahead and chuck it. And then we'll just kind of keep trimming this until we've got, what's a 1/4 inch? This is the one time that I work in like inches and stuff because that's how I learned to do Texas, because America. But you want like a 1/4 inch layer of fat covering this thing, which is that in metric units. All right, there we go. The other reason why you want to trim the brisket is, especially when you're working with a whole brisket, it's actually for aerodynamics because the smoke is going to come from one side and you need the brisket to be nicely shaped so the smoke glides over the whole brisket evenly so that you get even coverage of the smoke flavor, but also even cooking temperature. So you get a little bit of science in your brisket making.
Bit of F1 science, man.
Bit of F1 science. We're looking for that drag reduction on the brisket. A little bit off there.
So this will be faster than a steak?
Than a steak salver.
Yeah.
Be faster than a steak salver. Little reference there to our other channel, Formula Wombat, the channel by F1 fans, for F1 fans, from F1 fans that don't know that much about F1, but we invite you on the journey to learn with us. Like this little bit here, this was just hanging off here by a tendril. Sometimes people new to brisket making will be like, oh, but I don't want to throw it away, it's meat, I'll just tuck it down. Well, it's going to cook weird because it's this little sliver on its own. So just cut it off, it'll fix the dynamics of the brisket, and then you can feed it to your dog. You can buy his affection.
Or your cat.
Or your cat. I think most brisket makers have dogs, mate. Looking okay, let's flip it over one more time. Oop, don't want that. That's just going to be sitting under the flap anyway. Okay, I think it's looking pretty good. Just a few little trims off here and I think we're good to go. All right. That is us just about done. It feels weird to be like fondling the cow like this, the corpse. But yeah, that's it done. Now, in terms of the quality of your meat, I am of the opinion that yes, quality meat is always going to be better. This one in particular was 100 days grain fed, so it's got good fat to it. It's softened up nicely, but man, when you're going to blast something under smoke for like 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, at a certain point, the quality matters less than if you're making like, you know, a steak or something where you're doing a flash fire or a reverse sear. Like you're doing a brisket, it's going to cook for so long and so slow. You can kind of negate quality just by sheer cooking skill. So now let's pat this dry and we can start giving it a rub down. Now, I do need to say from the top here that I'm not a chef and I'm not an expert at making briskets. I've done a fair few and this is just my 2 cents. So be kind in the comments. If I've done something wrong, comment, let me know because I want to get better at this as well and you can help everyone else that watches this video be better at making their own briskets. Right now I'm just doing a pat down, so just paper towel, dabbing over the brisket to kind of suck off a lot of this moisture because we would prefer this to be dried out. If I had enough forethought, I would have left this in the fridge unwrapped overnight to help dry out the skin. That way you just get a nicer bark, which is that outer layer of the brisket as it cooks with the smoke. I didn't do that, is what it is, it's fine. You can also just nominate one hand to be your dirty hand. In this case, it's gonna be my left hand, right hand's gonna stay clean. You should only need to touch the brisket with one hand from this point. So change your gloves and yeah, use one hand so that you can still touch other like cooking utensils and everything. All right. That's looking kind of fine. Now, one of the things to keep in mind when you start cooking is be patient and plan way more time than you think you need. The general rule of thumb with brisket is 2 hours per kilo, which would be 2 hours per 2.2 pounds for the Americans in our audience. That's not necessarily going to apply to this bit here because this is the end of the brisket, so it's the thickest part of the cow, which means odds are it's going to take a little longer than the 4.5 hours of cook that the maths would suggest on this one. So give yourself tons of runtime. If you're preparing a dinner for people that night, start way earlier than you think you need to because the cook has a way of just stretching out and you do need to let the brisket rest. One of the biggest mistakes I made when I first started making it was I'd get impatient, cut into it straight away, and you ruin all of your hard work. You need time to rest the meat. Now, we can start giving it an actual rub down. I'm using 3 Little Pigs seasoning with a touch of cherry, which is kind of just like your classic barbecue rub, to be honest. I think it's like a classic Texas barbecue rub from memory. I also really like charcoal rubs, like black rubs. They look quite cool and give an awesome flavor effect as well, great bark. But for this part, we basically just want to do an even sprinkle over the whole cut of meat. And then we can tap it in a little bit, make sure that it stays. And this is what's going to give us obviously a ton of flavor. It's also going to help to dry out the surface of the skin because of the salt in here. So it's going to draw the moisture out of the cow and to the surface. And then because there's like sugars and stuff in here as well, it'll help give a caramelizing effect to help us build that really nice crust. So much of like the feel and the appearance and the value of the brisket is a quality crust. It really just makes it so much better. And then here you can just kind of lift it up, sprinkle over each end. There's something so satisfying about the rub down bit because there's so much potential still to be had here and you haven't screwed anything up yet. So at this point in time, it's the best cooking of your life until you make mistakes. Brisket has a lot of mistakes. Same as brewing beer, which is what we normally do on this channel. If you're new to Flying Wombat TV, welcome. Normally we're not a cooking channel, but beer and brisket are so similar in that they both require a ton of patience. They're a labor of love. Your first few batches always taste terrible and you spend a lot of time trying to convince your friends that it's amazing. But in the end, you will spend so much more money than if you just went out and bought one. It's the rabbit hole hobby. All right, I think that's enough. That's well and truly coated at this point. So you want it to kind of just look like it's had a decent layer plowed all over it. I've used like half-ish of that. And if you don't want to use fancy rubs or anything, that's totally fine. You could literally just use black crushed peppercorns and salt. Also just as good. Like it's really just what flavor you're chasing, what kind of things you want to see. And the best way to know what flavor you want, if you've never done it before, is just open up a bunch of these when you're at the smoke shop or the butcher shop or whatever, and just smell them. This one smells amazing to me. I've used it before. I like the cherry element at the end of the brisket. So that's what I'm gonna run with. Now it's time to talk temperature, specifically temperature measuring. For that, you need a thermometer because you could go by the old school methods with like times and cook temps and touch and feel and whatever your grandma told you, but honestly, temperature is pretty critical and there's no way to know what's actually going on unless you've got temperature probes. So you don't need ones like this. This is a fairly expensive little toy, but this is an Inkbird, it's wireless, and it means that I can monitor from my phone and everything, and I also have multiple probes. So I can put in different probes at different part of the cow and have an idea of the average cook temp across the whole brisket, which is Pretty handy if you want to spend a bit extra and have some fun gizmos to play with. But I'm going to stick one through the end here where the cut was made from the rest of the brisket, right into the cow. Nice. I'm going to stick another one probably on the other side, maybe to cross section like that, maybe like that. Maybe I'll go across this way. There we go. Stick it right in there. Nice. Now this way, we can monitor when we actually need to wrap it and what stage of the cook we're up to. Because whilst we're going to spend the majority of the cook unwrapped, it's very hard to know when to wrap unless you know what's going on inside the meat, because temperature is just going to have such an important role to play. Now that that's done, we can go ahead and whack this on the smoker. Now what we have here is a Texas smoker, so a classic old school barrel style smoker. On the side we have our firebox, which is where we actually control our heat, our smoke, basically the thing that's going to give us our cook. So at the moment we've got a bunch of charcoals in here that we're about to dump into the box. And then up here is where we actually have our cooking area, our grills. So the heat from the firebox is going to travel through a hole in the side up there and then pass over the brisket, which is going to lay along right here. So to prepare your firebox, I like using a combination of lump wood charcoal and actual wood. You can do it with just wood, you can do it with different types of charcoal. I like lump wood because it's real wood, it's natural flavor, it doesn't give you a ton of ash flying around everywhere, and it's easy to control. So if you're looking to make things easier for yourself as you start making it, try using charcoal and wood in combination with each other, because wood can be a little bit finicky, can burn a lot hotter, a lot faster, and then you're stuck trying to control and bring down temperatures, which is the enemy that you're trying to fight with brisket making. Consistency is key. So I prepared this earlier, basically had my charcoal burning away inside the chimney stack. I can dump that out now into the firebox, and I've already got a huge lump of wood right here that I'm going to shove it up against. This is ironbark. I love ironbark for cooking this kind of stuff. It gives a pretty decent flavor, and it burns really low and really slow, which is super, super critical. That's the name of the game here, low and slow. So we've got that charcoal pressed up against the wood. We're going to close this up now. Open up the side fins if you haven't already. Open up the top flap over here on top of the smoker, because airflow is what's going to generate more heat. The more air the fire has for combustion, the more heat it's going to produce. So at the moment, we just need to heat up this box and get that wood turned on. So I'm going to open up all the flaps, and as we start getting closer to temperature, I'll start shutting them off gradually until I hit an equilibrium and that temperature holds stable. I'm aiming for around 110 degrees Celsius to around 115 degrees Celsius, which is, I think, about 220 Fahrenheit, somewhere in the realm of 220 Fahrenheit. It'll show up on screen if I'm wrong, but that's the area that we're aiming for. A little bit higher, a little bit lower, doesn't matter too much, but that's kind of the sweet spot where you get a nice slow cook time without it taking an absolute lifetime. So we'll cut back to you when this thing's ready to go. All right, the temperature has now hit where I want it to be. It's actually slightly over, so I'm gonna have to adjust that. But we're ready to throw our brisket on, which is my last piece of advice. Help dehydrate it, because this is too wet on the surface. It should be a lot drier than this, but is what it is now. We're just gonna go ahead and run with it. 2, I like to cook with the fat side down, because the temperature from the smoker is coming from the box down there, which means it's gonna hit the fat first, and the fat is gonna help protect the rest of the meat from cooking too hard, too fast. There's different, I just inhaled smoke. There's different schools of thought around fat side up, fat side down. People say fat side up, the fat melts into the meat, makes it softer and more tender, but it also means that you're gonna have a lot of the rub just kind of running off the meat in rivulets. I like going fat side down. It tends to make a softer, juicier brisket to me because the fat protects the meat. But you do you, experiment with both ways. You're also gonna wanna position it as far away from the hot box as you can to help that meat cook slower. So you can see down here right now, it is really starting to cook. We've got a decent amount of flame going, so I'm gonna have to cool this off because it's too hot. So being a little bit further away from the hot box gives you more room for error, and it makes the temperature inside here a little more averaged out by the time it's actually hitting your meat. Now, let's go ahead and close this up. Now we sit back and wait. Now, you got 2 main ways to cool down the barbecue when it's over temperature. You can close off the fins, so I can close off the chimney at the top, can close off the paddle at the side in the hot box, because again, airflow is how you're gonna regulate how fast you're cooking. Less airflow means less combustion, means less heat, But if you can't cut off that flow fast enough and it's still too hot, honestly, the quickest adjustment is literally just to open up your barbecue, let a bunch of heat disperse out, and then close her up again once you've kind of brought it down a bit. And then just do those little adjustments until you hit a stable temperature and things start to hold. You do want to do this part quite quickly. If you notice the temperature skyrocketing, don't wait and be like, it will adjust itself later, because by that point, you've already ruined your meat. You really do want to keep it under 125 Celsius, like 240 Fahrenheit, I think. Once you get above that, even for a short amount of time, you really do start to damage the final product. So your fins and opening the lid, yeah? Now that we are cooking, we can talk wood. So obviously we've got our charcoal and we've got our iron bark in there that's providing the fuel for the cook, but you can also throw in specialty woods. Right here, I've got cherry wood, which adds a nice sweetness to it, obviously a cherry-like character, and I find that the best value out of these woods is to throw them in towards the the first half of the cook, really, because that's when your meat is most susceptible to absorbing all of that smoke character. The other way that you can make these smoke up more is by soaking them in a bucket of water for like half an hour before you use them, because wet wood smokes up more, less combustion, so on and so forth. I haven't bothered doing that. I've got plenty of these anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and, and get smoked out, chuck one in on top of the coals. That's gonna add some nice cherry flavor to our brisket. Smoking's bad for you kids, unless it's pipes or cigars. We are now about 3-ish hours into the cook, and I left this for a little while, went to get some lunch. Cooled down too much, but that's all right, it's an easy fix. We've thrown a bunch more coal into the chamber. We've still got a big block of iron bark there burning away. And we've now also opened up the firebox's fins, opened up the one here at the top of the chimney, and now we're adjusting temperature. So having both of them open is bringing this up nice and quickly. Once we hit around 110C, 115C, we'll start to narrow them down again, and then we can show you what our brisket looks like. No point waiting, let's just show you now. So we are now starting to develop a crust, which is nice. Feeling quite good actually. Don't want to leave this open for too long, but we are developing nicely. We've got some good caramelization developing on that surface, which is awesome. Little mistake that a lot of people do when they're new to this. They keep opening it up again and again to check on it, check the meat, want to have a look at it, get antsy about seeing it. Don't do that. Every time you open it up, you're losing your heat and you're ruining your even cook temperature. So resist the temptation to keep checking your meat. You got to bump it up.
It's up.
No, but I was doing something else.
Yeah.
All right, here is what 6 hours in a smoker looks like. We're now at 75 degrees C internally. She is looking beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. But it is time to wrap it. So I've got my heat-proof gloves on for that exact reason. We're gonna take this back into the brewery and show you how to wrap up a present for Santa. Okay, to wrap it, we're gonna plonk it on our board. We've got 2 strips of butcher's paper pulled out. We're gonna go meat side up so that you know which direction you're rotating in, because again, we want fat side down on the actual smoker. I need to get these off. Can't do anything with these. All right, so I've got the butcher's paper about like 1.5 times my arm length. It's probably too much, to be honest. You don't really need it that long, but it's fine. It's not the end of the world. So now we're gonna wrap over top, fold the paper across this way as well. Whoops. Fold it over like you're making a big present. And then we're just gonna wrap over itself. So we're now fat side up, fold in again, make sure we don't have any loose bits hanging off, meat side up. And I can just trim that bit there or fold it over, it's fine. Actually, I'm gonna give this a quick trim so we don't set this thing on fire. There we go. Now, we can go pop this back in the smoker, remembering top side is meat side. Very important to remember. I'm also gonna rotate it the other way around because it's done most of the cook facing one direction. You don't have to do this, but just because I want a more even cook on both sides working with a smaller brisket, just tilt it at 180 degrees. Let's pop it back in some smoke. And back in she goes. All right, now she's gonna sit pretty until we hit 94, 95 degrees C. The golden rule is you want to hit 95°C, which is whatever that is in Fahrenheit, because that's when you have all your collagen inside the meat that has been broken down and it becomes that like meat like butter falling off, falling apart type of thing. I tend to go for slightly lower. I like 94 because I also know that I get about 1 more degree of cook by the time I've actually wrapped it up, put in my esky to rest. So I'm aiming for 94 degrees C. We are now almost finished for the day. It's been a long day. We're about 10 hours into this cook, and now we need to prep our esky because this is how we're going to rest our meat. This is a very important step. I urge you not to skip. A lot of people, when they make their first brisket, are so excited to cut into it. As soon as it hits temperature on the barbecue, they start slicing it open, and they get a little bit disappointed because you need to rest the meat so that all the juices distribute evenly through the meat and you don't end up with dry cuts. It's very important to rest it because that muscle tissue is stressed out. And the way that we're gonna prep our esky is by pouring a bunch of boiling water into our esky purely to get this thing up to a similar temperature to what the meat is already holding. So by doing this, we'll leave it in here for like a minute, dump this water out, and then this esky is already nice and warm so that when we put our brisket into it, it's not gonna lose a bunch of temperature and kind of get a bit of a cold shock. Now, let's go take our brisket out of the oven. Smoker. Meat's back on the menu, boys. We're done. You actually can't see anything, but I promise that thing is well done. And that's what you want it to be with brisket. You're not going for medium rare. Let's put this in the esky. All right, we're gonna pop our brisket in. We've already got a towel down the bottom. We've emptied out that boiling water. And now we're gonna layer another towel over the top to help trap that body heat of the brisket itself, because the goal here is not to start cooling the brisket down, it's just to rest it at a stable temperature for a little while so that we end up with the juices distributing nicely through the whole chunk of meat and we don't end up with dry cuts. Now, if you're patient enough to do so, leave this for an hour or two. I'm not very patient today, I'm hungry. So I'm going for an hour and then I'm gonna slice this bad boy open and we can see what we're working with. It's now time for the reveal. And now that we're finally getting down to the nitty-gritty of it, I feel like it's appropriate behavior for me to adopt this southern accent that I have absolutely no right to be at the behest of. I feel like I'm kind of doing a McConaughey, but like a really cheap, really bad McConaughey. But that's all right, because what we're working with here is a beautiful brisket. Oh yeah, look at that bark. That's looking good. That's looking real good, to be honest. Okay, let's there we go. Okay, we're ready to slice. All right, now we're ready to cut. I'm fairly certain I remember correctly because it's been a while since I've made it, but when you have a whole brisket, right here's the ends, then you'd have the flat. Normally the flat would be cut this way, I guess vertical you could call it, and then the head would be cut horizontally. I'm gonna find out if I remembered that correctly. You ready for the first cut, mate? 11 hours in the making. Oh yeah. Oh yes. She's looking good. She's looking real good. Helps to have your knives very, very sharp before you start doing this. Oh, okay. I've got to do it. I've got to do it. That's beautiful. Okay, so the bark on this is fantastic. The meat inside is perfectly pink. Oh my God. So good. So good. Oh boy.
I am really jealous right now.
Let's show you how we're going to turn this into the best sandwich ever, paired with the best beer ever for this kind of meal. This right here is a session ale, so you can have an absolute butt ton of them whilst you enjoy your beautifully cut brisket. Link to make that one right up there. The best way to make a brisket sandwich, in my opinion, is putting a South American twist on it because, of course, I'm Chilean and we know how to do meat. So we're gonna go a little layer of mayo, maybe a bit of chili mayo. On top of that, we're gonna go a bit of chimichurri, which is a classic South American marinade for your beef. Let's put a couple slices onto there. And then we're gonna keep things real simple. Coleslaw, marinated coleslaw, right on top. Close that bad boy up. and you're good to go. That right there is one of the best damn sandwiches you're ever gonna have in your life. If you wanna know how to make this fluffy, delicious bread right here, that's the focaccia we made on this channel. Link right in that video, just on up there. Now, we'll catch you guys next week when we show you how professional breweries carbonate their beer so you can enjoy it at home. Cheers guys, we'll catch you later.